Hey everybody, I want to welcome you to Increase. This is episode 32. Can't believe it. We've done this 32 times. And so I want to welcome each and every one of you. Today is 7-11, July the 11th. You know, some people believe in luck. I believe in blessings. So, this blessed day of 7-11. So I want to, again, just welcome you all to the podcast. This past Friday, we talked about the untold part, and we kind of just went over a few things that I believe everyone really doesn't consider when it comes to marriage, when it comes to business, when it even comes to leadership, whether you're a manager or whether you're a pastor of a church. And so this particular episode today, episode 32, is really about getting the other side of the story told, because a lot of times, again, we enter into a lot of stuff and we really don't talk about the other side, and a lot of times we don't want to talk about it because it's ugly, it's unpopular, it's something that you really would say, I want to talk about this because I don't want to be negative. You don't put, as some people say, I don't want to put that negative energy out there, put those bad vibes out there, whatever. But the truth of the matter is that in order for you to be successful, you got to be able to look at all things from every angle possible, because it's those areas that you don't have or you don't see, you're not able to be successful in, and you get blindsided by stuff. And so we don't want to be blindsided by things that could be avoidable. Now, you can't control what another person does. There are going to be variables within your life that you have no control over whatsoever. But you want to make sure that you're able to do and to handle everything that you can possibly, so that you can win, right? So I want to start off with looking at some statistics, because as I was preparing for this, I really began to get excited. I didn't look at it as a sadness. I really got excited about it because I think a lot of times when we look at, let's face, for instance, marriage. When you look at marriage, we think about the highlights of things, and then if we think about the negatives, it's pretty much in like some kind of general area of like divorce or whatever. But we really don't go into the nuances of things, and we kind of give these generalizations of why something is the way that it is. And I believe that if we really and truly just want to be transparent and honest with ourselves, if we had more information, we would be better able to navigate some things. And this episode today is going to really ruffle some feathers, and that's its intention. I'm really intentionally getting people to really look at things from another perspective, because I think a lot of times we wasted so much time and resources by ignoring the obvious. I think around us, I think God sends us people to coach us, to mentor us into various areas of our life, and that it's really up to us if we're going to listen to them or not. I kind of liken it to how the scripture says that we entertain angels unaware. I think a lot of times we entertain the very people who can be a blessing, but because of society and because of our own fears, we'll listen to more so of the person who's never done it, or the negative side of things, the person who is that's not their scope of practice, more so than the person who is in that particular industry or niche. So again, I kind of really wanted to dive into some things. I took some very structured notes because I didn't really realize how in depth this thing could be, and it's really, like, say for instance, you look into again, marriage, and we want to look into marriage. So marriage is not just two people coming together, but they're formulating their lives around so many different things, and that you're taking two people and you're making them one. And here's something that I began to just look up, and I want to share it with you, my audience. And it's on Fatherly, and you can look this up yourself. It gives 8 reasons why marriages fail, especially after like 5 years, the first 5 years. And the first thing it talks about is undiscussed debt. Now you're in love, you know that that person may have some student loan debt or whatever, but when it comes to thinking about debt, the thing is that it's the stuff that you don't even consider. Like you know it's there, but you don't know the APR rate as far as it multiplying and being added. And but also when it comes to debt, it also reveals what kind of a steward the person is that you're dealing with. Are they a person who waits to the last minute to pay their bills? Or are they a person who doesn't like, having that debt on over their head? Or what, how do they pay their bills? Is really some nuances within that really reveal the character of a person. Because if they're a person who likes to wait to the last minute, then they're also a person who they'll brush it off because they're like, oh, it's just a little service fee or whatever. But it's the $5 here, the $10 there, that's added on to it. That over time you look up and you realize you could have done so much more. But it also reveals how nonchalant they are and where they place value at. So one of the first things it talks about again is undiscussed debt. Are they comfortable talking about money? Are they comfortable having conversations of being vulnerable besides talking about how you're going to raise children, going, what are their fears, or even, childhood traumas? But some people will tell you all about their past and all of that stuff. But when it comes to money, it's very taboo. It's almost like when you go to your job and begin to ask, hey, what do they pay you? Well, what do they pay you? Well, what do they pay you? It's something that they keep hidden within themselves because it shows really what kind of person they are. The second thing it talks about, it says, believing that marriage is a cure-all. Some people use marriage as a means to just have sex, and they feel like that they're having sex with the same person, so they're going to be safe. But then they begin to be abusive with sex. Or it could be that they're using that person as an scapegoat from their family, or from a bitter ex, from a ex relationship wherein they may have children with another person. It is so many different things. They may even use marriage as a means or as a cure all for their addiction to drugs or alcohol. It's various things that are happening, and it causes divorce. And so in the beginning, they put on a facade and a mask to cover and to cloak what is truly happening on the inside, or what has happened previous to you being introduced to that person. And so these are the untold parts. Like we oftentimes, when we look at, because I want to talk about this later on, and don't want to get ahead of myself, but the Pew Research Institute talks about, when it comes to Christian homes, on the divorce rate within Christian homes. And so we look at that and we go, oh man, Christians, they're getting divorced. Well, it's possibly because of this or that, but it's really the little small things. The Bible says it is the small foxes that spoil the vine. It's really not the major things that causes an issue a lot of times in a relationship. Like some relationships can get through cheating. Some relationships can get through, outside children. Some relationships can get through certain addictions. But then there are others that it's those little small things that the court system call them irreconcilable differences, that relationships and people that are in relationships never even consider or think about. Even when you go back to debt, right? A lot of people don't really even think about how they spend money, how that affects the other person. Because you may be the person who is the breadwinner, but does that mean because you're the breadwinner that you get to spend the most? Are you the kind of person who will spend money, right? Because it's extra money and it's there. But the plan for the family or for the relationship is to save for a vacation, or to save for a rainy day, or to save for to fix the roof, or the air condition, or whatever. It's those little small things, and it causes a rift in the relationship because the other person feels like they've been betrayed. It's like they're giving into an account, and someone is always withdrawing, even though they're giving. what they're doing, what they're taking away is more than just the finances, or is more than just them hiding something. Because if you're hiding this, then you're possibly hiding that. Or if you're only with me because you're using me like a pacifier that a child would use to self-soothe. So it's really not. So the issue becomes, it's not that that I feel like you don't love me, but you only love me because I'm able to provide you with this and bring you healing in this area or soothing in this area. But the moment that you finally get over it, or you get through it, or whatever, then you become this other person. And so a lot of times you begin to see that people have always been narcissistic, but they were able to hide it very well. Another thing it talks about is number 3 is not speaking up. Some people, when they get in relationships, they begin to water themselves down or dilute themselves to the point where the other person begins to walk over them, and then they begin to be so controlling and being controlled. And so now they have lost their voice. Sometimes abusive relationships aren't always in a physical means, and even the verbal abuse comes at a means of not like just saying you're stupid, you're dumb, or you're never, you'll never find nobody like me. But it's in those small, subtle nuances that begin to break that person's self-confidence down. They begin to break down their conscious level, and to the point where they don't even believe in themselves. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust the people around them. They begin to be very dependent upon the spouse, or whatever mechanisms that's in the relationship. And so they lose that sense of speaking up for themselves. And so for them, divorce is the only way that they know to gain their voice back, or to begin to gain their voice back, or to speak up for themselves. Another one that says trouble with the in-laws. Some people, you marry them, and they're so enamored with their parents that they negate the needs and the love that needs to be given to their spouse. And so they find themselves in a situation where one spouse is always in a turmoilous situation with their in-laws. And then when the spouse begins to speak up about how the in-laws make them feel, or how they're being mistreated, they not only get brushed off, but then they begin to be compared to other things and begin to be pushed away. And so again, these are subtleties that are overlooked or not even spoken of. And people can take it for only but for a little while, and then they just say, you know what, I don't need this. I don't want to be in this kind of relationship anymore. Another is religious differences, and that's self-explanatory. Another is not staying connected. And I want to pause right here, because a lot of times I've heard this said, you have to do the things that you did to get that person. But one of the things that we fail to realize is that people mature and they change. And because of that, you're not able to allow the relationship to blossom and to grow. There's some things that when you were dating, you liked and you laughed at, that maybe as you got married and you're in 2 years, you no longer find funny or cute, or now it's become a nuisance because it's been done so much. It's not that you've lost your sense of humor, or even that you have changed dramatically, but over the course of the relationship, things have happened that you now view differently. And so when the relation now so now as you're in the relationship, you begin to lose those connections. You begin to lose that sense of um synchronization. You're no longer flowing together. You're no longer in a place where you are together with that person, but you find yourself being more alone than you are when you're with that person. And so you got to do those things that are connected. And this is the untold part of marriage, because marriages go through those things. Marriages go through those eras and those moments wherein you may have a personal hit, and because you're trying to navigate that personal hit, it begins to affect your marriage. It begins to affect other areas in your life. And you need to have friends that can help you navigate that, but also push you to remain in communication with your spouse so that you all can remain strong and remain a unit. The seventh thing is it talks about is differing life plans and even divorce. I think a lot of times we people don't know how to argue properly. They have a disagreement or whatever, and everything is the moment you do something that they don't like, or something major happens, divorce is the first thing that comes out of your mouth. And even differences in even life plans. In the beginning, you may have wanted children, but now you're like, listen, forget them kids. I want to do something different. Or even, both are in the military, and now you're like, I want to get out. I don't want to travel no more. I just want to live in one state. I don't want to go overseas anymore. I just want to be here. And how is that being respected? How is that handled? Some are still like very much so career minded, wherein the other wants to withdraw and pull back because they no longer want that lifestyle of hustle and bustle. How are you going to navigate that? Are you going to let it escalate to the place and fester to the place where you both split and divorce? There are means and ways that you can communicate with each other so that these things can be mitigated. But when you are married, these are the things that come up that need to be not only discussed, but need to be attacked together. Attack the idea, attack the vision, so to speak, but don't attack the person. You want to make sure that your spouse knows that you're coming from a loving place, but also that what is going on is very serious. Finally, it talks about disputes over family responsibilities. Some are very traditional in the sense of the wife is the homemaker, and she cooks and takes care of the home, and in the rearing of the children, and the father goes out and he is the breadwinner. In other homes, it may be a little bit different, wherein both family, both husband and wife are working. But you have to do things that are to the benefit of your relationship. And sometimes in relationships, they start out one way, but as your ambitions grow, as your family grows, things may begin to be different. And so you may have a wife who says, listen, I've always been a homemaker. I don't want to do nothing else. I don't want to go out and get a job. I don't want to, start a business or whatever. I want my hobby to be a hobby. I'm not trying to make it into a business. Or you may have a husband who, is like, listen, I don't want to just be the only breadwinner. Like we need us to be, two income family or whatever. Those things happen. And so a lot of times families cannot get through those difficult and dark moments, whether it's arguments or even a conversation. And so they find themselves at a place of divorcing. And it's very unfortunate that that happens and those things take place because I believe that the family unit is under attack. I believe that the family unit, I'm gonna say it again, I believe the family unit is really much so under attack. And I'm not speaking of sexuality or any of those kind of things. I believe that the very fibers of what it means to be a family is being attacked. Two-parent home, um, whatever your values are, but for mine is Christian family, Christian values and morals. And so I believe that a lot of things are just being dwindled, whether they are extremists or whether they're very liberal. And so I believe that, as a society, when we begin to see those things happen, we're also watching as people are suffering unnecessarily, right? So here's another thing that I was looking up, and I'm telling you, it just literally blew my mind when it came to the statistics that I was looking at. And we're talking about divorce, right? Especially in Christian homes. 74% of married couples that are Christian divorce. 74%, according to the Pew study. 28% of that is evangelical Protestants. 14% is mainline Protestant. 9% is historically Black Protestant. 19% is come from Catholic homes or Catholic, believers. Um, Mormon make up 1%. Orthodox make up less than 1%. Jehovah Witness is 1%, and then other is 1%. So when you look at religion as a whole, you begin to see how divorce is affected by different um religions. I mean, even down to the point of Jewish family 1%, non-Christian family is 5%, Muslim is 1%, Buddhist 1%, Hindu less than 1%, other religions of the world is less than 1%. So we begin to just see a trend here that there are things that need to be discussed, and it's not always about there's no, love, like, oh, all we need is love, or things are financially not there. There are things that's happening within the relationships that we simply do not talk enough about. We talk about, oh, they're not having enough sex, or maybe they're, one spouse is cheating, that sort of thing. But when it comes to finances, when it comes to the direction of the family, these are some things that we got to discuss, especially when it comes to understanding the dynamics of a family. That it's more than just getting married. It's more than just having, a boy and a girl as a child and getting a dog. But it's really about, okay, now we're married. How is our communication? How are we going to allow it to grow? Are we actively working on listening to the other person? Am I a safe space for my spouse? Or is she or he is a safe space for me? All of these other things. How are you navigating treating your children? How does you treating your child affect your spouse? How does the actions of your in-laws affect your marriage, affect your children? Does the way your spouse family treats you as being their family, how does that affect your spouse? There's so many other dynamics that we don't even look into, you know, even when it breaks down to, okay, what school do you want them to go to? What direction, if your child, is very gifted in a certain sport, or even a particular subject, science, mathematics, history, or whatever, are you willing to move so that that child can gain the necessary resources to be successful? Or are you going to brush it off as, hey, listen, they're going to get it from right here where we are? These are some of the things that marriages and that marriages go through, and need to have those type of discussions, need to come out and begin to just deal with those things. Because a lot of times when you're dating, you're not going to get to those kind of questions, because sometimes you don't even think about that. You don't think about, am I going to circumcise my son? What are the benefits? What are the pros and cons of it? Is it because of religion? So that sort of thing. It's so many different things, and these are the untold parts. Especially when you look at parents who have a child that is on the spectrum, and you have both parents who love this child, but are simply afraid, and they don't know how they're going to care for that child. They don't know how they're going to react to what level of on the spectrum they're going to be. And for some, it may appear to be abandonment, but until you've ever been in that situation, you never know what it is, and how it affects your own mental capacity, how it affects the other parents' mental capacity. And it's very easy to say, well, listen, you got to deal with, you the parent, you brought them into this world, so on and so forth. But until you're lacing those shoelaces up on your own feet, you never know how you're truly going to react. You never know truly the weight that it's going to place upon your relationship, even when it comes to having a spouse that is sick and the other one is well, and the roles have to be reversed. You never know how that other person is not only going to react to it, but how that's going to make them feel long term. you know so we're just looking at that particular section of, of things not being talked about and told about. Even let's look at, for instance, now you're a spiritual leader, you're a manager on the job or what have you, and now, hey, What are some things you may feel like? Listen, I've gone to school. I have an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree in business. I've managed whatever kind of jobs, but here's the kicker. Each job, each business has their own culture. And just because you've done a thing somewhere else doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be successful in another area. And sometimes people in businesses, on jobs, they begin to speak out of speak beyond their level of experience. And so that's why a lot of times when you're on these job interviews, they ask, well, how did you handle difficult situation? Or give us an example of a time where you had to work with another, because they want to literally see not only what have you handled that you deemed to be difficult, but they also want to see how in depth can you really go, because they want to know exactly, were you someone who kind of just came in and was like a helper, or were you really and truly hands on? Because when you're hands on, you have a different vernacular. You begin to speak differently about a situation, and you're able to give details and certain nuances that people who are not really hands on, really don't have skin in the game, really can't answer for you. And I think a lot of times, especially in church, we deal with people and we hire people who have never really truly got any kind of skin in the game. They've never really done it. And you find this especially for those who go to college. You deal with professors who have never really done a thing, but they teach the subject, but they've never really personally have done it. I watched a TikTok where this lady is a lawyer, and she was just telling black lawyers as they're going through college that many of your professors, 75% of the professors that you have, has never stepped inside of a courtroom to argue a case law for a client. And so that was very profound for me as I began to think back on many of the professors that I had when I took classes on entrepreneurship. Many of them had never had a business, never even coached a person to own a business, but they knew the course material, but they had never themselves ran a business. There are many who you're going to deal with, even in your professional life, who are in leadership position, but they are very brand new, not to the subject, whether it's technology, whether it's healthcare, whether it's in real estate, whatever. But they have the paperwork behind their name that says I should know what I'm doing. So the untold part, especially in management, is that a lot of times people who are under you never even understand that sometimes even the owner of the businesses have no clue what it is to run a business. They have no idea what it is to operate in a system that they're paying for, but they don't know how to clock you in. They don't know how to coach you on how to handle whatever. And so it's very funny when you are looking into that kind of stuff, and when you are a person who is known for handling business, that wow, I have people who are over me that I'm running circles around because they have no clue what they're doing. How am I going to handle that? Am I going to go to work and always be bitter, or am I going to continue to learn the system and advance myself, or and begin to teach whoever is under me how to get to where I am, how to do what I do, because I desire and I refuse to allow myself to be lower than or be less than. So again, I just want to put this out here to all of you who are there, who are watching this, that even as a business owner, there you're gonna be approached by situations in your business wherein you've never had to do this before. And statistics show that there is a large percentage of businesses that fail, and they fail horribly, because they either are at a place wherein they are personally are not developed, meaning they opened a business, they did a little bit of product, but their business started to grow and they didn't know how to grow with the business. Then there are going to be others who mismanage money. They were so focused on getting top tier things, and getting the perfect location and all of this other stuff and getting the most expensive and machinery equipment to make their job easier, that now they ran out of money, so they don't have money for payroll. They don't have enough revenue coming in to cover their bills. And so, and within the first 5 years of business, they close. Are you seeing a comparison, or are you, or am I crazy? But marriage, when you're not prepared, doesn't make it fast 5 years. Business, not prepared, closing in within 5 years. There seemed to be some kind of parallelity to business and marriage. There are things that, even when it comes to communication between the customer and the owner, your customers is telling you, listen, we love your product, we love the idea of your product, here's some things that you need to work on. But because of selfishness, because you believe in yourself more than listening to what the customer is saying, you begin to now navigate and move toward pushing whatever it is that you have going on. Like, well, I just get more customers, not realizing and understanding the marketplace swings like a pendulum. And so it can either swing in your favor or swing against you. And so, how are you going to handle that? What are some areas wherein you can now begin to work on that? One, you need to just begin to really look at your numbers, really begin to understand what is really selling and what's not. Just because you like it doesn't mean that the marketplace likes it. Or just because you feel like in where you live, no one is doing it, doesn't mean that it's going to be a sustainable business where you live, because there could be a reason why no one is doing it there, because there isn't money there to support said service. You understand? And so a lot of times we don't want to listen to that. We don't want to listen to, as a business owner, you have to be able to be very diverse. There's a level of diversity. There are times wherein you may say, well, listen, I started a business because I didn't want to work for nobody else. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to do things on my own. I wanted to handle things the way I wanted to handle it. Okay. So now you weren't able to communicate to one manager or one supervisor or one foreman, but now you're going to deal with that same attitude, that same mindset, but now it's going to be a supplier, or now it's going to be a person who you have a contract with. And you need to be able to speak to them and share with them the various phases of the business that you're in or what you're doing for them. And if you wasn't able to do that on in your job, then it's going to stand to reason that you're not going to be that much more successful in business. So a lot of times your 9 to 5 prepares you for owning a business if you look at it that way. If you apply skills and learn skills in order for you to take it to another place. My godfather, I love him dearly. Darius O'Kane, he taught me something when it came to a job I didn't want. I didn't want to work at a call center. Had no desire to work in a call center. He said, man, listen, you got a family, you got to take care of them, but also, and more so to the point, you want to make sure that when you take this job, that you're not just getting it just to stay in that position. He said, Alphys, you got to grow. You got to you got to move up. And so because of that, I was able to learn so many other things in the background that everyone else didn't get a chance to see or even experience. And so I was able to take those leadership skills that I learned in that time that I worked there, and was able to apply it to me as a pastor, me in other relationships that I was in, and even in business. And so I appreciate him for that. And so I think a lot of times when it comes to businesses, we don't want to get a business coach. We don't want to get a consultant to come in and to speak to the various areas wherein we need to work on, because you can't automate majority of some of the things that you have going on. And that automation is not so that you can kick your feet up, but so that you can kick it into high gear in other areas so that you can be successful in all areas of your business. We find this even when it comes, again, even to church. We have pastors who have people who are legitimately not only knowledgeable, but successful in many areas, but they refuse to listen to wise counsel, consultations of individuals who are in that particular industry that could take their ministry to the next level. We don't want to listen to people, even when it comes to marriage. There are marriage counselors, there are marriage consultants who can not only break down where your relationship is, but also give you necessary tips to take your marriage to the next level that can grow and groom you both into being better human beings and have a relationship that you truly love and admire, something that you possibly didn't even think would be possible, and can help you to get through those dark and troublesome times. I think a lot of times we are afraid to do that because it shows that we don't know it all, and to our pride and to our ego, we don't want to address those things. But the untold truth and the untold part of being in a marriage or being a pastor or being a manager or even being a business owner is first understanding that you don't know it all. And the second part is that you need help. And so the when as a business owner and as a even as a supervisor on a job, you're always learning. You should always be reading articles, reading books, looking at the industry standards, and beginning to incorporate little bit at a time those things that you are learning and what you are receiving in from all of your research, from all of the industry experts within that particular field, so that you can now begin to make your job, make your business run that much more smoother. Things shouldn't have to be as hard as it is. And life is hard all by itself. We're always going to be blindsided in some way by something that happens. Whether it's your child telling you that, as much as they love you, there are areas wherein they felt like you abandoned them. But as a parent, you don't stop loving them, but you begin to understand where they're coming from because it's from their perspective. It's coming from a genuine loving place, but they're also letting you know that you have room for improvement. And I think also, even when it comes to our professional lives, whether you are, again, a supervisor or a business owner, that your customer isn't saying to you that maybe today your food isn't as great as you think it is. That could it be possibly that your ingredients aren't fresh? Could it be that you didn't season it as much as you normally would? Could it be that your service is starting to lack because you're overwhelmed? That you really haven't even thought about how much of an increase that you have taken on. That even though you may have lost one or two customers, you've also gained two large accounts that take up a majority of your workforce. And so now you need to begin to hire. Well, maybe you're the pastor who now your congregation is growing, but you also have a demographic of people, not of age, but of educational value, that you now need to begin to increase in your teaching and provide for them a space wherein they can begin to learn more without having to go to seminary. These are some areas in our lives that we really need to begin to look into and really need to consider and understand what it is that's going on. When it comes to business, for instance, one statistic shows that founders of previously successful businesses have a 30% chance of success rate in their next venture. In other words, when you have done a thing, and you have found yourself to be moderately successful, when you go to sell it or find someone else to run it for you and you start a new venture, you automatically have that wealth of information now, that now it won't take you as long to build because you've already done it before. you know the highest 5-year survival rate for new businesses is in crypto mining, but right now crypto is going down. So now what are you going to do with all those computers? How are you going to diversify your business? How are you going to make it grow? 82% of successful business owners admit that they have the right qualifications and backup experience to run a company, even with limited cash flow. Why? Because they understand that less is more. You don't always need the most expensive laptop or computer system. You don't always need the most energy efficient, machines and everything. You can do so much more with less when you begin to integrate a lot of the systems that you have. And the untold part is that when you start out, you're just trying to make it and you're really learning. You're not going to know it all. So stop trying to act like you do and really sit back and ask questions. I watched an interview with Ali Sadiq, and he talked about one of the blessed things about gardening was is that there's a whole community of gardeners in that when you're growing, let's say peppers or whatever, and someone else is growing tomatoes, and that's something that you want to grow, that you go to the person who is growing tomatoes, and they'll not only give you seed, but they'll begin to tell you, listen, grow this other crop right along with it, because these kind of insects are going to eat away at your leaves. That's going to cause the death of your tomatoes, or cause your tomatoes not to be of full size. And that, this is the kind of fertilizer that you should begin to use when people are truly in a position in business, in church, in marriage, where they wanted to be successful. They're not afraid to ask questions. They're not afraid to seek out help because they want to be better. I want to tell you, I have a preaching coach. And I call him Unc for a reason. Not just because of wisdom, but the way he embraced and the way he shared with me information. He's always, nephew, listen, when you're getting ready to minister, slow down. Do it this way. When you're studying, look at it from this angle. Because he wants me to be successful. When you're in an industry wherein you're like, listen, I may be new, or I may be moderately, into this thing, but I want to really learn. You'll begin to get into that community and allow them to reveal to you some hidden truths that will help make what you're doing that much more easier. And so that is the untold part. You can look at any person who is married, any person who's been married for any extended period of time, and they will tell you, listen, there were days that it wasn't always wonderful. There were times when I wanted to give up. But you know what? We kept communicating. We began to talk to people who had, what we felt like were successful marriages. And they kind of gave us, the rundown on some things. When our children went through various things, we reached out, and these parents had already went through it, and they were able to help me navigate that. you know Successful pastors, they go to other pastors who are doing it greater than they are, and just say, hey, how, listen, my church, we're not struggling, or we're in a struggling spot. Have you ever gone through that? I sat down one time, um it wasn't even a year ago, with the pastor that pastored two churches at the same time. And he went to one church one Sunday and another church the next Sunday. And one of the things that he told me was, he said, you never want to have a favorite. He said, because the moment that you have a favorite, the people are going to notice it. And you're going to find that people begin to leave because they feel neglected, and they also feel abused at the same time. And so sometimes, even in our lives, we begin to show what is a favorite. And because we show that it's a favorite, other areas begin to recognize it. And then they begin to despise that they're not just not the favorite, but how they feel like they're being treated. So that could be a key for you, that maybe right now you haven't prepared your family for whatever it is that you want to do, whether you want to enter into ministry, whether you're prepared to be married, you're dating a young lady or you're dating a young man, and your family is very sarcastic and they're very, mean spirited. And so it's okay for you because you're single. But right now, is that an environment that you want to bring a spouse into? Not because you feel like they're not going to be able to handle it, but could it possibly be how they're going to feel about it? How is that long term going to affect my relationship? Because sometimes, here's the thing that people don't realize, is that you keep hearing a thing over and over again. First it was funny, then next 5 or 6 times you start considering what they're saying. And so they literally begin to wear you down to the point where you don't even realize it. And so these are conversations and things that you really need to begin to consider, even when it comes to taking a position with the job or even starting a business. Cardi B right now, on Twitter, was having a Twitter feud with the Shade Room, and they posted some pictures of her children. And so, she's like, listen, there should be some boundaries, but why is it that when I want to be defensive of my family, Now I'm being ostracized and being said to that, well, I'm a celebrity and I should be able to take it. I should have thick skin. Do you realize that that's also how people are going to look at you when you begin to advance financially, or you begin to gain more in your life, whether it's peace, joy, happiness, or even taking trips somewhere that your peers around you have yet to even taken? How are your family going to feel, or how they're going to treat you when you have more children than they have had? Oh, you got a lot of kids. That's going to be expensive, and who's going to feed them? As if you're all of a sudden you're just going to let some starve and feed the others or whatever. These are some of the untold parts that a lot of times families and people really don't talk about. How do you react when you're in Walmart or in the mall, in Macy's somewhere, and you see a mom with 5 kids? Are you like, "Ooh, it couldn't be me"? Or are you like, "You know what? That's a beautiful family." These are some of the things that a lot of times we don't talk about. And so when you look at that, even when it comes to business, people are going to treat you different because you start a business. They're going to be wanting discounts, and people are going to want you to give out free information or do things um, you know, that you won't charge them for, but they want you to still do the work. Or people are going to want you to do the work, and then they're going to say, well, remember when I lent you a certain amount of money, or I was there for you when you were down and you were hungry, or you were needing a ride or whatever. But I'm still running a business, and I'm trying to take the opportunity that you gave me and move even further. Many businesses even close because of disappointment. They disappointed because the family and friends didn't want to support them. And so because of that, they feel like nobody else is going to support them. And they allowed their self-esteem to get to the place where they just gave up hope and went back to a 9 to 5. But still, while they're working the 9 to 5, everything within them is saying, I needed to stay at that business. I needed to work it. So again, even when it comes to businesses, get a business coach, get someone who can take your business, and the moment that you feel like, oh my God, I'm like overwhelmed, I don't know if I'm coming or going, get someone to come in and begin to consult with you and share. Hey, listen, you're at a place now where you need more employees, or you may need to scale back for this time, or where you are, because you may have a great business, but you're in the wrong city. Doesn't mean that you can't service the city that you're in from a different location, but sometimes you're in the wrong city, because the city that you're in may not be able to sustain the level of service that you're providing. But you could be in a different city that may even lower your taxes. They may have favorable rent space or lease space, or even ownership of space, right? You may need to move to a different city so that the equipment, as it comes there, because it's such a major metropolis, the shipping is a lot cheaper, and now you can service those smaller areas because you're able to travel that distance, and about those little small places, wherein other businesses will say, listen, we're at a spot where it'll cost us more to service them than for us to just let someone else handle that. You gotta be honest with yourself and know exactly your target market, and know exactly what your business can and cannot handle. Even when it comes to pastoring, some of us, we may love to pastor a church that's 100, 200, 3, 4, 500 member church, but you may not have not only the educational background, but you may not even have the grace, or the wherewithal to handle that amount. Your max may be at 30 people, 20 people. Handle what you can, and then and allow yourself to be satisfied at that place, because to go even more requires more out of you, and that may not be in you. You may have the health to only handle but so much, and so you just need to stay right there, and there's nothing wrong with that. Here again, the untold parts of things. So people are like, they may say to you, man, you sound great and you should be on major platforms, but that may not be your thing. You may get nervous with a church, or the group of people over 30, 40 people. You may start getting nervous. And no matter how much practice, and no matter how many opportunities you have, that nervousness begins to destroy you internally, mentally, spiritually. So you want to make sure that you are in the right place and that you are operating at your efficiency level. Let's talk about business even for a moment, right? So even startups that fail, 90% of startups fail. 10% of startups fail within the first year. Across all industries, startup failure rate seems to be close to the same according to the Small Business Association. Failure is most common for startups during the first to 5 years, with 70% failing in their industry. The second largest reason why startups fail is due to running out of funding and personal money. Other notable cases of failure are weak founding teams and being beat by the competition. One of the things that I admire about New York City is that they didn't allow Walmarts into the boroughs. And I love that because it kept the mom and pop stores alive, and it allowed for the small economia to be there and to thrive. Because where there are Walmarts, you find that there are very few startup small businesses. And the businesses that are there have to start at a very high level. And for startups, it's really hard to find funding because a lot of times you don't have everything into place. And sometimes, and I'll say this, and this is not talked about enough, is that, and they say this in the statistics, is about the founding team. The founding team needs to be very diverse because there are going to be areas and things that's going to happen that you may not be privy to or even know anything about. And I'll say this, you know, it's more than just getting a client and then servicing that client, whether it's product or service. But there are areas within it wherein there may be penalties if you don't meet certain requirements within the contract. You may have a weak contract. They may be getting over on you. You may not, because you may not can afford a lawyer to look over the contract to make sure that it is beneficial on both ends. The number may be large to you, but you haven't considered the workload that is going to come behind it. If you're a person who provides a service, right, you got to look at what kind of maintenance am I going to have or be have done on the vehicles that's going to travel, because it's more than just the supplies that's going to be needed to provide the service. You got to think about maintenance. You got to think about now the travel, the wear and tear on the equipment as it goes in and out of the vehicle. If the person who is employed by you don't put the equipment up properly, the extra wear and tear on the equipment, are you properly training and are you updating your training for your employees? When you have how quickly and how often are you replacing your equipment, whether great or small? How are you handling it? Are you tracking the mileage and the whereabouts of the vehicles that you have, that you're using to provide a service? There's so much into it that oftentimes when you look up, the business is suffering because the founding teams didn't really consider a lot before they launched. And I know there's and I say this even to business owners, create the product before you get the LLC. Create the product before you spend money on the licensing and all of this other stuff and permits and whatever. And the reason why I say that is because when you begin to produce that product and you are hands on, you get not only skin in the game, but you begin to go, wait a minute, how viable is this? Who and where can I begin to scale this business from where I am? Is this something that the marketplace where I am is going to sustain it? This is the untold parts of not only business, not only marriage, but even in churches. And if I could say this to any pastor or leader within the church, stop ignoring the people who know what they're doing. Yes, it's good to get second opinions and things of that nature, but they also need to be vetted. And sometimes we put more weight on the people that's internally there, that's organically there to help and to produce, more so than the people who you go out and hire to come in. And so, to you, pastors and leaders, make sure that you're able to educate yourself on what your hiring practices are. Don't just go off of their word, but also look at the work that they've already done, the person who you're hiring, but also look into what is it going to take to produce what it is that you want, or even come close to something that you want. Because it's not that you're being blindsided. Now you're turning a blind eye to what is happening around you. This episode of Increase was here and is here to bring awareness to untold parts of our daily life, things that we ignore purposely, and some things we just don't even consider. But I wanted to present these things to you so that now going forward, you have them in your mind and can begin to make the necessary changes so that you can be successful. Your marriage doesn't have to suffer and end in divorce. Your business doesn't have to fail because you feel like no one is here to help you. Your church doesn't have to close its doors because people are starting to walk away. But honestly, get and reach out to individuals who can help you to develop the very things that can make you successful. It's an old saying, but it's true. Closed mouths don't get fed. You're only starving. You're only in that position because you're not asking either the right question or the right people. Reach out, seek help. And I'm telling you, things can turn around, and they can turn around quickly. Everything doesn't have to take months, years, or whatever. Some things can happen instantaneously because you automatically are there and you're willing to make those necessary changes. It's going to take a different mindset to go and to advance and to increase. And I believe in you, and I believe that you're able to do it. Hope you guys have an amazing week. This is episode 32. We've done this 32 times now. And I thank you to my Increase family. I can't wait to see you guys on Friday. I'm going to be out, but I'm not going to neglect being right here in front of you, giving you exactly what is needed right here on Increase. You guys have, again, an amazing week, and I look forward to seeing you. Bye-bye.